Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to Dead Malls, your one home for the coziest and most educational mall tours here on the web. In tonight's episode, we continue our northern binge of Season 7, seeing two absolutely dreamy dead malls. One in small-town Wisconsin, and the other in the far northern rural backwoods of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. These two malls, Cedar Mall and Mineral River Plaza respectively, had been on my radar for quite a while, as there was very limited coverage on both of them, and the only way to find out what the deal was to make the journey. Finally, in the summer of 2024, I got my chance to drive up and see them for myself, and as you can tell by the driving footage, this was an absolutely stunning journey. I genuinely need to travel up north and to the UP more. It's like America's hidden wonderland. Let's just say the 8-hour trek was definitely worth it. But before we get to the UP and its amazing hidden mall, I'd like to take a moment and shout out our winner, who was able to successfully guess both of the next malls. Very nice job, user, that person. Now let's start tonight's episode off by seeing the teensy-weensy Cedar Mall in Rice Lake, Wisconsin. A small-town 1970s gem featuring what has to be one of my favorite mall fountains, probably ever. I absolutely adored this little center court fountain, and honestly all of the Cedar Mall's aesthetics. The little fake plants to spruce up how many empty storefronts this mall actually has, the maroon colors on the tile fountain and linoleum floors. There was just so much to love about this little mall. So let's begin with its story and find out just how it came to be. Our story begins in June of 1974. When in the small but growing town of Rice Lake, Wisconsin, the Nelson Construction Company of Mason City, Iowa, would approach city officials with their idea of a brand new mall for the south side of town. A simple and small stretch of enclosed corridor between three anchor stores. Nothing too big, but just enough to give Rice Lake its own slice of American mall culture. A month later in July, and the land was officially rezoned for the brand new mall. To be named after the nearby Red Cedar River, the Cedar Mall would officially be born. At a cost of $4 million, moving of earth quickly began, and the 192,000 square foot structure of the mall itself took shape in the summer of 1975. The mall in papers at the time was compared to being just a bit smaller than the nearby and now demolished London Square Mall in Eau Claire, and just a bit larger than the nearby Thunderbird Mall, also demolished, in Menominee. While construction persisted into 1976, the nearby downtown district of Rice Lake and its store owners prepped for the worst, as JCPenney, Woolworths, and Herberger's, three long-time and massive names, among many others, were moving to the new mall, leaving behind the old label-scarred husks of their former downtown department stores. While downtown Rice Lake looked like Hawkins in Season 3 of Stranger Things, Cedar Mall, just south of town, ready to preview its colorful and shiny stores by late summer of 1976, prepped for opening. I wish I would have stopped and taken a picture on the Bath & Body Works bench, maybe a selfie. But I thought it was so weird seeing one of these stores here in such a small little mall like this. In a lot of these small town mom and pop malls, you don't see a lot of these big national name brands left anymore. Bath & Body Works has been pulling out of a lot of Midwest malls, but they're still going here and rocking that old wood panel facading that I absolutely adore. And I'm not sure what that little alcove is up there in the top left of the screen. Maybe that's where the security sits and looks out for perpetrators, or maybe mall management just really wanted to have their own balcony somewhere and just couldn't go without it. I'm not sure. That looks like it was maybe an old Walden Books. But right across the way here, I'm wondering what the heck was this maroon clad and orange store that looks like it was straight from the 1970s. Anybody know? That looks incredible. We're going to come back and look at that more in depth later, but first, let's go check out the center court once more. On Wednesday, August 11th, 1976, 10 new stores would open early as a preview of the new Cedar Mall, while the rest of the stores and the mall itself were set to fully open later in October, when 17 of the planned 30 shops would fully open. Clipped through newspapers.com and coming directly from the local Letter Telegram newspaper itself, we can see historic photos of the mall from this time, and an article which reads, "Workmen were still busy this week, laying ceramic tile around the base of the main entrance fountain, and extensive work remains on stores opening later." Finally, on October 3rd, 1976, the small Cedar Mall would hold its official grand opening, and what shoppers in 1976 found is pretty similar to what you see today, as the mall aesthetically was never majorly renovated, and still features the same beautiful bulbed fountain today that wowed shoppers 49 years ago. The mall featured Anchor's Woolworths on the south end and Herberger's opposing on the north, with the central space soon to be occupied by JCPenney. Colorful stores to open and slowly light up the mall's corridors included those like Seifert's, Morier, Walgreens, Stevenson's, Trade Home Shoes, Radio Shack, Lake Optical, Maurice's, Eda Joe's, Michelle's Hallmark, and the Needlepoint, with more coming in the following years. In 1977, JCPenney would join as the mall's third anchor in the central spot. Back when the mall first opened, the freeway to the west didn't exist, so it itself was on Highway 53, the old Highway 53, which took thousands of travelers and shoppers to and fro Rice Lake and other parts of Wisconsin. This thoroughfare, especially with the mall's popularity, got backed up pretty regularly. Eventually, in 1978, the freeway would open, freeing up traffic, and in 1981, the highway corridor just north of the mall would also open, bridging over the Red Cedar River and connecting access between the freeway and the new mall, which on the south side of Rice Lake was becoming the town's booming new retail corridor. Exploring these side hallways is always a fun treat in itself, because you get to see all these small and weird little storefronts that were probably never anything name brand, but you just wonder, how long have they been closed? 5, 10 years? And at that, will they ever be reopened? I don't know, that's something I always just think about when I'm visiting these small town malls, is once all the name brands eventually do move out, how much longer does it really have? Like almost all of the small town malls we cover, the last episode especially, the 70s and 80s were the golden years for Cedar Mall. As pre-online shopping and big box convenience, the mall was really the only place to shop. And within its small corridors, Cedar Mall was the perfect little shopping haven for all of Rice Lake. However, times would change, and its downfall began with the retail beginning to disperse across the landscape of southern Rice Lake, with Walgreens moving first. They would close their doors in the late 80s, moving to a new freestanding store. The old Walgreens would be taken over by a Myers Drug. The next of the mall's losses came inevitably with Woolworth's closing on January 31st, 1993. As a part of their bankruptcy, JCPenney, ready to expand into a larger space, would subsequently move to the former Woolworth's pad, and the central spot would become a Dunham Sports. Myers Drug would close in February of 1995, and that's really all I can find for the Cedar Mall as of the 90s. I can't really call Cedar Mall a dead mall as of today, but it sure does look a lot different tenant-wise from the olden days. The 90s was sort of the mall's shift period, where a lot of old, outdated names closed and were renovated into newer stores, some of which we can still see today, like Bath & Body Works. Big box names like Shopko, Kmart, Walmart, and newer strip malls sucked away shoppers from the mall. However, despite the competition, Cedar Mall was sort of able to dodge the bullet of becoming a completely dead mall, as in the 2000s, a handful of local names and mom-and-pop shops came in to fill empty spaces. I think this mall was one of the first, if not the only mall I've been to that has one of these bulb fountains, which was just so awesome. I could have hung out in that center court for hours, it was so peaceful. Now let's head down the hallway and check out this old style store, which is now a thrift store, I think, but if anybody knows the brand that these hot colors used to rock, let me know down below. The store here was so cool though, I just loved the shapes and colors on the wall. Everything was so 70s, it was so awesome. What's up there? In January of 2014, JCPenney would close their struggling store at the Cedar Mall, with Dunham's moving to and renovating the old JCP building, leaving their original central anchor vacant and abandoned since, now covered with blue paper. More inline stores would close, and in August of 2018, Herberger's would shutter its doors for good, ending their 73-year-long legacy in Rice Lake, as Herberger's was one of the town's very last original department stores, and was the last original name to bid farewell to the mall. Cedar Mall has sort of just been in limbo since 2018, as not much has changed aside from a few mom-and-pop stores opening, and recently TJ Maxx has taken up a spot in the former Herberger's, although they have no mall access. Typical. So as of 2025, Cedar Mall is still open, hopefully still pumping water through that one-of-a-kind fountain, and the mall itself is chugging along. If you're a big fan of these small town malls that haven't aged a day in their aesthetics, look no further. As for its future, well, if the last name brands do leave, it could be detrimental, but the mall is so small and still under local ownership that it doesn't really struggle with a lot of the same problems that much bigger dead malls do. So if you're ever in Rice Lake, get out there, give it a mall walk, shop the local shops, and maybe toss a coin into the beautiful fountain. Now let's head way up north, the furthest north I've ever gone to see a mall, to the tiny village of White Pine, Michigan, and check out Mineral River Plaza, a mall stuck in Christmas of 1971. The story of Mineral River Plaza was far more interesting to research, ending up being a much deeper rabbit hole. While Cedar Mall was your classic small-town American mall, Mineral River Plaza and its tiny accompanying mining town of White Pine, now made up of just a few hundred residents, was a much different story. Located just a few miles off the coast of Lake Superior lies this very small, strange town. The whole town feeling like some sort of odd 50s suburb in the middle of the woods, is in many places stuck in the 20th century, and a lot of it lies abandoned, with old mid-century modern schools and long-forgotten inns now crumbling and dotting the landscape. Stick around for that. The Mineral River Plaza, though, once thought to be the crown jewel and centerpiece of this mining community, is one of the last places still open, with just a handful of names, a diner, and a public library keeping its globe lights lit. So let's head into a different era, step back in time, and literally see a different age of malls entirely. Hello 1971. This was easily one of the greatest dead malls I have ever seen. Still looking like a literal snapshot out of a 1970s postcard. Those giant luminescent and soft glowing globe bulbs were the cherry on top, giving the entire mall common area, which was otherwise super dark, a beautiful rainbow show. And the complementing Christmas decor, which seems to be permanent, made me feel like I was in a Christmas wonderland. Oh, and yes, that was literally just a giant chunk of raw copper in the center core. We'll get a better look at that later, but between that and the payphone shell, there were just too many little details that were impossible not to love here about this place. When do you think the last time somebody was like, let's go to the Mineral River Plaza, let's play a game of bags. Let's enter the mall from across this giant field and let's play some cornhole in this empty dead mall. That is really the whole vibe I get from this place. I mean, half of the mall is literally surrounded by a giant gravel parking lot, which gotta be the first mall I've ever seen with a gravel parking lot. This place is just taking so many firsts, and we're gonna get to the history, but I want to let y'all enjoy the mall for just a bit longer before we dive in. Before White Pine took its current form of the small sprawl of the 1950s, it was far more western. The entire town resembled that of something you might see out of Red Dead Redemption, as White Pine was largely established during the late 19th century as a copper mining town. However, after World War I, the old mines shut down, and the outdated town kind of just sat around, slowly turning into a ghost town. That was until the Korean War in 1950, when the Ontonagon County copper mine, the largest in the entire US, would be constructed right next door. At the time, the population consisted of just around 30 people. However, thousands of jobs soon became available at the mine in just 2 years' time, so new housing quickly sprouted up, leading to White Pine's iconic subdivision layout. New houses along with schools, 2 churches, and a motel sprouted up through the 50s and 60s, and new roads came in to take UB travelers and the copper mining industry to and fro the country. For a time, White Pine was booming, with a solid copper economy. In 1965, they would even discover entirely new and massive ore deposits near the White Pine mine, which would double and expand its reaches, making it, in the words of the Detroit Free Press, perhaps the largest copper mine in the world. The town's population peaked around the mid-1960s, and while I'm unable to find a census number or anything concrete in newspapers, we can assume that the town and surrounding area had maybe 2,000 residents, as one article lists 711 children in the White Pine schools in 1969. The story of the mall itself, however, begins in 1970, when a tract of land near Highway 64 would be bought up by Unlimited Developers Incorporated, or UDI, a company looking to bring in some clearly lacking retail life to the town. They would quickly lay out their plans for the new 53,000 square foot Mineral River Plaza, the first mall in the western UP, a mall which would contain a Red Owl grocery store along with 15 smaller stores under its roof. Ground would be broken on September 1st, 1970, with the small structure quickly taking shape and getting a roof by that same winter. Those few residents of town at the time eagerly awaited for their small slice of the American mall craze, as developers were hopeful that the mall would open by spring of 1971. Gosh, if malls could talk, I bet this place could tell lots of stories. Of all the residents come and gone over the years, travelers passing through the country, the golden ages of the mining town and the stores all filled in and bustling on busy nights, the Red Owl grocery store playing Muzak over their speakers, enticing shoppers to cash in on those low prices. It really is an entirely different world today, and a weird feeling only being able to see the remnants of the old. This is actually just a chunk of copper. Is that what this is? Oh yeah. Came right from this very land. Anchor Red Owl Grocery would be the first to open in the complex on Tuesday, October 12th, 1971. And I'm not sure why the mall's opening got delayed for so long, but Mineral River Plaza would officially open in October of 1971, with stores to follow and open in the mall proper, including a men's variety shop, women's and children's shoe store, a barber, card shop, drugstore, dry cleaning service, restaurant, and even a beauty salon. There were also plans for a bowling alley, restaurant, and hotel complex nearby called the Katenka, which would be completed shortly after the mall. Mineral River Plaza was hoped to bring some sort of shopping life to the tiny village of White Pine. However, most of the quote-unquote stores were closed by the late 80s, including the mall's largest and only anchor, Red Owl, which would be gutted and turned into the mall owner's garage in the following years. The mall itself struggled in the 90s, instead becoming more of a community center for White Pine, gaining a post office and library. In the late 80s and 90s, mining operations at White Pine Mine were significantly scaled back, and people very quickly began leaving the once again struggling town, leaving its dying mall stuck in a bygone era. And basically, since the 90s, the mall has, for the most part, remained unchanged, a literal hidden retro gem. In 1997, the White Pine Mine closed entirely, and for almost 30 years now has been passed around through a flock of different operators. It's still operating today, albeit at a very low capacity, and as of the 2020 census, White Pine's population is at a mere 339 people. And that was 5 years ago, so who knows what it's at now. It's probably less than 300. Honestly, it's like this whole town has just come around full circle once again. It's crazy to think how it was all built up and started from practically nothing. Just a few people, some dirt roads, and a couple of houses. And then it became this great big town for a time with dozens and dozens of houses and buildings and even its own small mall. And nowadays, pretty much all of that is abandoned or being used as someone's storage facility. Also, that's what that weird mall exit that just goes out into a field looks like from the outside. Now, from what I understand, this grass patch on the south side was possible expansion space, but I guess those plans just never fully worked out with the copper bust that sort of folded this town. So folks, if you're still watching, I just wanted to take a moment and thank you so much for watching this evening's episode. I hope you enjoyed these two beautiful small town malls and their stories. Both of them, as of releasing this in June of 2025, are still open. Cedar Mall is still rocking that amazing bulbed fountain, and Mineral River Plaza still lights up those incandescent glow bulbs daily. Also, check out that old red owl paint on the facade of the store there. It might be long gone, but it's so cool to see the history forever burned into the building. If you're ever on a road trip through these underrated lands in America, stop by, give these malls a mall walk, and maybe even explore the town further. That's what I'm going to do for the rest of this episode as I let the credits roll, but if you'd like to support the channel further and get exclusive behind-the-scenes content, consider checking out the Patreon. Otherwise, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on weekly Dead Mall episodes. Next Saturday, we'll be back once again, this time at another mall in the Copper Ranges. This one, though, featuring the ore in its name, referencing the great land it's built atop. Be the first to guess the next mall, and I'll shout you out in the next episode. But until then, have yourselves a lovely evening, and peace out, guys. See you later. Those look like abandoned apartments over there. Let's go check this out. Mineral River Lodge. I can imagine that maybe at one point in time, after a long day of shopping, tourists of the area may have come to the Mineral River Lodge. Let's go see. I'm gonna peek my head in really fast. I'm curious. Oh man, that's nasty. This is wild. Looks like it's been abandoned for like 20 years inside. And these windows are all intact back here, which is just crazy. You can crawl right in right there underneath the board. I hope I can go all the way around back here. Find out. Pretty much it though. I mean, this is literally mineral, or not, this is White Pine, this is the town calls it. This is all it is. Abandoned hotel, abandoned school with I guess that's been repurposed, and a few homes here and there, and that's pretty much it. And then the mall. Interesting. There's a person walking in the middle of the road. Oh my gosh, it's the lady from the post office.